This spring in our Bible study, we explored the Olivet Discourse from a covenantal and fulfilled perspective, and tried to understand Jesus' teaching in his Jewish context as a Hebrew apocalyptic teacher who is announcing the renewal of the covenant. The Olivet Discourse is Jesus' main prophetic and apocalyptic teaching on his parousia, which means his coming or presence, and the end of the age. We asked whether the timing and nature of Jesus' prophesied events were past and covenantal, or future, which were new thoughts for most of the group. Here's what we found. Let's look at the context. Because of their understanding of Old Testament prophecy, the Jewish disciples believed that Jesus did fit the timing of when the Messiah should come. The Jews believe in a two-age system to redemption history, the Old Covenant and the New Covenant age, which would be joined by a transition period called the days of the Messiah. They believed the Messiah would come into redemption history once to accomplish all these things. So if Jesus was Messiah, they hoped he would usher in the days of the Messiah, the end of the Old Covenant age, and the beginning of the New Covenant age or kingdom. These days of Messiah were expected by rabbis to be a 40-year gradual transition between the Old and New Covenant ages. If Jesus fulfilled those expectations, then redemption history may look like this: Old Covenant age, 40-year transition period, New Covenant age, or age to come. The Hebrews based their expectations for the Messiah on types and shadows from the Old Testament, like this. Moses was seen to be a type of Messiah. He freed people from slavery to Pharaoh. Jesus freed people from slavery to sin. With Moses, people crossed through the Red Sea. With Jesus, they crossed through his red blood. With Moses, 50 days later, the law was given at Sinai. After Jesus, 50 days later, the Spirit was given at Pentecost. After Sinai, 3,000 got death because they broke the law. After Pentecost, 3,000 got new life because they received the Spirit. Then there was a 40-year delay or transition period when the Israelites were wandering in the wilderness. Then, after the cross, there was a 40-year delay or transition period as the gospel went out throughout Israel. With Moses, after that 40 years, the children of Israel entered into the promised land. With Messiah, then, after the 40-year transition period, the children of God entered into the New Covenant kingdom, or the age to come. In the tradition of Moses, they had a temporary covenant of law and flesh and blood, and with Jesus, they hoped to have an everlasting covenant of love, spirit, and grace. If the end of the age came 40 years after Jesus, it would confirm for many Jews that Jesus did fit the bill for Messiah according to the Old Testament. You'll notice the biblical language describing the age to come intensifies as the 40 years after Jesus' cross and resurrection draws to a close. These things were written as warnings for us on whom the final end of the ages has come, Paul says in the 60s in his letter to the Corinthians. But now once at the final end of the ages, he has been manifest to put away sin, the Hebrew writer says also in the 60s. So this 40-year transition period we see is an intensifying period between what the Jews called this age and the age to come. And did 70 AD and that the destruction of the temple mark the end of the age and the beginning of the age to come? Was that 40-year transition period the last days of the Old Covenant age and the last days that the Bible talks about? So what does the Olivet Discourse have to do with proving Jesus as Messiah and that model of redemption history? It is the teaching upon which all other New Testament apocalyptic teachings are based. The Discourse has raised many questions about when Jesus said he would come, the nature and timing of his coming, and when the end of the age would be. Some believe these are future, visible, universe-ending events. Others believe they were past, Old Covenant age-ending events, and we tested the latter view. If Jesus was accurate in the nature and timing of his prophecies, this establishes him as a reliable prophet or Messiah. And if not, well, that's why it's important. Many skeptics point to Jesus' prophecy of his coming and the end of the age in the Discourse and say that he must be a false prophet because it did not happen. But are they understanding the nature and timing of these events correctly? Even C.S. Lewis says, "Say what you like, we shall be told the apocalyptic beliefs of the first Christians have been proven to be false. It is clear from the New Testament that they all expected the second coming in their own lifetime. And worse still, they had a reason, and one which you will find very embarrassing. Their master had told them so. He shared, and indeed created, their delusion. He said in so many words, 'This generation shall not pass till all these things be done.' And he was wrong. He clearly knew no more about the end of the world than anyone else. It is certainly the most embarrassing verse in the Bible. So notice how C.S. Lewis assumes that the coming of Jesus and the end of the age equal the end of the material world. Lewis understood the promised timing of these events, but did he correctly understand the nature of these events? Maybe the coming and the end of the age were not supposed to be the end of our material world, but the end of the old covenant world of law and sacrifice. So before the Olivet Discourse, Jesus gave a spiritual overview of events. He said, the kingdom is transferring. The kingdom will be taken from you and given to a people producing its fruits. Notice that great change is coming. I think he's talking about Old Covenant people having the kingdom and then New Covenant people having the kingdom. So with the end of the age and the kingdom transferring in mind, let's look at the Olivet Discourse. After pronouncing judgment on the current religious authorities and the temple system, Jesus walked away. Jesus left the temple, according to Matthew, and was going away when his disciples came to him to point out the beauty of the buildings of the temple. And he answered them, "You see all these things, do you not? Truly, I say to you, there will not be here left one stone upon another. All will be thrown down." In other words, your temple and your Old Covenant Jewish world will come to an end. What did he say? The disciples were shocked. So the disciples followed Jesus to get some clarification. And as Jesus sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, "Tell us, when will these things be? What will be the sign of your coming or your presence and the end of the age?" Parousia is Greek for presence or arrival and is used of a king coming into his kingdom. The disciples associated the destruction of the temple, which is all Jesus said, with the end of the Jewish age. This would be brought about by the coming of the Messiah into his kingdom, based on Daniel's teachings. Were they right? You be the judge. Jesus answered the disciples' questions by giving them 13 signs of his parousia or coming and the end of the age. We'll look at these signs and their first-century fulfillments. Did they happen as and when Jesus said they would? Oh, and about these fulfillments, Jesus also promised a time frame. He said, "Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away till all these things take place." And this is the promise to which C.S. Lewis referred. So this time frame matches what Jesus taught all throughout his ministry, actually. "Truly I say to you, there are some who are standing here who will not taste death," he said to his disciples, "until they see some of the Son of Man coming in his kingdom." Again, he said to his disciples, "Truly I say to you, you will not finish going through the cities of Israel until the Son of Man comes." And many more things like this, Jesus said. So did he accomplish his mission? You can decide for yourself. Let's look at the signs of the end of the age and see if they were fulfilled.